Hey everyone, it's Britt with Talks with POC. Welcome to episode 4. I know it's been a minute since we've done an episode, but I'm really excited to get this fresh content out to everyone. This episode actually features a very special guest, so I'm really excited for you guys to watch this episode. And as always, for my Black people and people of color, this is for us. Let our voices be heard. Hey Ma.
Hey Britt. Hey daughter.
Hey, so thanks again for joining me on this episode of Talks with POC. I know it's definitely been a while since we've been able to put out an episode, but I'm really excited to have this conversation with you, and hopefully everybody that's watching is equally excited. So with that said, we'll kind of just jump right in, and first question, like always, is introduce yourself. Tell us, where you're from, where you grew up, and we'll kind of just go from there.
Okay, well, first of all, I would like to say thanks for having me. It's very kind of you. And I'm Dawn. I'm Brittany and Brian's mom, born in Chicago, Illinois. So that's where I'm from.
All right. So how long did you live in Chicago?
So I lived in Chicago until 1996. So I was born in, well, we won't put that out there, but I lived there until 1996. So I've been in Minnesota, 24 years now?
Okay. Chicago's pretty big. So did you grow up in the city part of Chicago, the suburbs? Where did you grow up in Chicago?
Well, actually, I grew up in the city on the west side of Chicago. It was all black neighborhood. I was born and raised there until the age of 18, and then I moved to it's called the north side of Chicago, and at that time it was predominantly white, and I lived there, and I actually was living there when I gave birth to your brother. And we lived there, and then we moved to Waukegan, and that was predominantly white too, Waukegan, Illinois. And then from Waukegan, we ended up moving to Minnesota. So you were like in kindergarten, and so you guys were like 5 and 7 when we left Illinois.
Yeah. All right. So can you recall your earliest experience with racism? Can you recall any moments like living in Chicago?
I really didn't have any experience. I really didn't experience racism when I lived in Chicago. And I'll tell you why, though. I grew up, like I said, it was an all black neighborhood. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I didn't know anything about whites. I didn't know anything about racism. I did grow up as a Jehovah's Witness. Mm-hmm. And so I went to the Kingdom Hall with my aunt, and that was in Oak Park, Illinois. And at our Kingdom Hall, it was 98%. I would say 99% white people. There was probably 5 black people in that Kingdom Hall. But because I was so young, I didn't understand racism. So if someone mistreated me, mm-hmm. I didn't connect the dots that, this person is racist, or, they're discriminating against me. It was, I didn't know that because I was never taught about it, because we didn't have to worry about it because we lived around all blacks. So we all treated each other the same. So I did not have an issue with that living in Illinois. My first time experiencing racism was in the state of Minnesota.
Okay. Well, we'll jump to that in a sec, because you actually just brought up a really good point. So you said, when you grew up, you predominantly grew up around, like, in all black neighborhoods, and you hardly saw any whites until you were at the Kingdom Hall. Yes. I would assume that your parents as a child probably never talked to you about racism, because they
not at all,
right?
No, because at that time it didn't affect us. We lived around all black, so we were in our own little community.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yes.
So a lot of people really don't understand that, but it's like, why would that wasn't a conversation, because we didn't go to school with white kids, we didn't live around white kids, we didn't play with white kids, so we didn't have to have a conversation about white people.
Right.
Yeah.
But and I guess you, like you mentioned, at the time you were so little, you didn't even realize that.
Even if I was being discriminated against, I probably wouldn't have known what it meant.
Right.
At that time.
That makes sense. So you did mention that when I asked you what your earliest experience was with racism, you said you didn't really experience that in Chicago, but once we moved to Minnesota, you experienced that. Can you talk a little bit about how it was different from us kind of being in Chicago and what we were surrounded by versus once we moved to Minnesota, what that looked like, and then move into your earliest experience with racism from Minnesota?
Yeah, so when we left Illinois and moved to Minnesota, we moved to a white Minnesota. I mean, we moved to, and we're talking 1996, Minnetonka.
Yeah, I remember.
There weren't any blacks. I mean, I know you remember you and Brian going to school. I mean, it was very, very white, and so it was different. I do remember though, people were super nice because I think that they looked at us like we were from a different continent or something. It was just like, oh my, we have some black people. And so they treated us super nice. But it almost got to the point where it became more like, okay, now you're not nice to me. You're treating me like we're needy. Like they wanted to do everything for us. Yeah. And it's like, no, we weren't needy, I mean, we were doing okay, but that was fine. But I didn't feel discrimination because at that point, I still wasn't really sure what discrimination was until I felt it. Mm-hmm. So to jump off into the second part of your question, and let me know if I'm moving ahead, you said the first time experiencing it, and when I was aware that this is real, it was actually when we moved to Prior Lake. It wasn't even in Minnetonka. It was when we moved to Prior Lake, which is a very small town. And it was with your brother. He had a hard time in school, of course, being a young black little boy in class. And I remember he was probably in middle school. And him and some, Caucasian kid got into it. The kid kicked Brian, pushed Brian's desk over. Brian fell on the floor. Brian hit the kid back, but Brian got in trouble. That kid didn't. And I'll never forget this because it got pretty deep. When he told me about it, I was livid. And I went up to the school and I went into the principal's office and, with dignity. And I said, why did my son get in trouble when this kid pushed him out of his chair? Mm-hmm. And the principal, and I remember this vividly, he said, well, if you have a problem with it, go to the Prior Lake Police Department. So that's exactly what I did. And I don't know if you remember this, but so I went to the Prior Lake Police Department and he said, you can go make an assault report. The school didn't want to deal with it. So I went to the Prior Lake Police Department and I made an assault report. And so the mom of the little boy who pushed Brian out of his chair, she reached out to me and she was so upset, not at me. She was upset with the school because she said it didn't have to go to that level. The school should have handled it. And so long story short, her son got in trouble, as a, juvenile, offender with the police department and, had to go to court, had to write an apology statement to me and Brian. And the mom was like, this is ridiculous. I don't know why the school didn't deal with it. That was my first experience with racism in Minnesota. That's when I knew it was real. Mm-hmm. And then it happened again. Your brother, as a kid, he was very sick with asthma. So I went up to the school one day to pick him up for a doctor's appointment. Mm-hmm. And the buses, they're all parked parallel next to each other. And Brian said, and I went into the school to get him. And he said, Mom, don't walk through those buses. Those kids are mean. Of course, me being who I am, I'm like, I'm walking through the buses. So we walked through the buses and some kid on the bus yelled the N-word to me. And my first mind said, keep walking. Mm-hmm. And so I walked a little bit and I was like, no, he's not getting away with this because if we continue to let this behavior go, how is it going to change? So I turned around and I walked back to the bus and I knocked on the bus and I asked the bus driver, I was like, excuse me, may I get on your bus, please? Mm-hmm. And the bus driver said, sure. And I walked on the bus and I said, who just called me a nigger? Well, all the kids were so scared. They were like hiding under their seats. And one kid pointed to the kid who said it and he was hiding under his seat. And I just politely grabbed him off the bus and I took him into the principal's office and I told him, I say, tell the principal what you just called me. Mm-hmm. I said, tell him. And so long story short, they called his parents, the kid got suspended. So that was my second. So from there, that's when I knew it was going downhill for Brian. Because at that point you hadn't told me about any experiences that you had. Even if you did, I didn't hear about them. I was just experiencing stuff with him being a boy. So yeah, so that's when it all, became real to me.
Yeah. So when you pulled the kid off the bus and you brought him to the principal's office, were they receptive of what was going on, or were they like, call the police?
Not really. He tried to blow it off. He told the little boy, "Oh, that's not okay. Apologize to this lady." And I said to the principal, "That's not okay. You need to call his parents."
Yeah.
So then he called his parents, but he tried to blow it off and thought I would just walk away, but I didn't.
Did that, I can't remember, you may have said this, but did that boy get suspended, or was it just like, sorry, and then?
No, he got like a 2-day suspension. Okay. And I think he got banned off the bus for a couple of days. Yeah.
I have the questions out on my phone. That's why I keep looking at it.
That's okay.
So we kind of touched on this a little bit of, kind of what the experience was living in Chicago versus what it was once we moved to Minnesota. Can you touch on your experience in having and raising 2 Black kids? And, does that bring any extra worries and fears for you, as a parent, because we are Black?
It does. It does, with all the racial disparities that are going on right now. It does. I mean, I remember there are nights, especially when you and Brian both started driving, that I wouldn't sleep at night because I knew where we lived. There was a lot of racism going on, and I just wanted to make sure that I heard that front door open and both my kids came in the house safely, because I never knew if you guys would make it home safely. It was very hard. I was stressed out all the time, wondering if my kids would make it in the house at night safely. I mean, Brian was constantly getting pulled over, just driving, being Black. He would get pulled over. And so, it got to the point where I had to tell him, call me. I need to hear the conversation that you're having with the police officer. So it was very tough and very, very stressful. Very.
I would imagine that still carries into today.
I still worry about it to this day. To this day. Even though you guys are all grown up, and you guys are both doing well. He has kids and everything, a family, but I still worry about it. It's more, especially with him, I still worry about it. If you talk to, I don't think there's a Black mom on this earth that would tell you, that has Black kids, that will tell you they don't worry or lose rest at night, not worrying about if their kids are safe. We do.
So this kind of leads into my next question. So I as you know, unless this comes as a surprise, I don't have any kids. I think that we can all agree that raising kids is hard. It's hard work. You put a lot into it. You give a lot. There's lots of give and take when it comes to raising kids. Do you think that raising Black kids is harder than raising white kids, or do you think that it's just different and there's different things to be worried about?
It's harder, and I'll tell you why. I'm going to dive off into something kind of deep, but I won't go too far in it. But it makes me think about the Green Book, okay? And I'll tell you what the Green Book is. It was a guide for African Americans struggling to travel during the Jim Crow era. Okay, the Jim Crow era started in 1865. And, we had to have a guide as Black people to be able to travel. Now, I feel like, and that was the 19th century, maybe early 20th century. We're in the 21st century now. We still have to have a guide. We have to groom our children. I have to have a whole conversation with Brian before he leaves the house on what to do, what to say, what not to do, what to wear. It's a stigma. There's a stigma based on how we speak, how we articulate, what we look like, what we wear.
Mm-hmm.
So it's no different than, like I said, the Jim Crow era. It's like we're doing it all over again. We're priming and preparing our kids to learn how to travel struggle free, without a struggle.
Mm-hmm. I think I think that's an interesting point.
Mm-hmm.
I'm definitely not familiar with the book that you mentioned, but I'll look into that. It's almost getting to the point where there's so many, rules or guidelines for Black people. Like you said, we can't do this, we can't say that, we have to dress a certain way, or our hair has to look a certain way, or the way we speak has to sound a certain way. And I feel like it's getting to the point where at one point we're not going to be able to do anything. There's all these rules and guidelines in place, and it's like,
well, it's like we're going back to 1865 where we were segregated when the whole Jim Crow era started. It's like, I thought we were past that, but now we're back to it.
Yeah. And I think, I'll say, these rules and guidelines are put in place because they're meant to silence us, you and me, mm-hmm. Black people, everybody. And we know better than that now, right? Like we will not be silenced. And
not at all.
No matter, we'll probably get into it in another one of my questions, but even, in headlines, when you see Black people in headlines, it's always, like we're thugs, or we did this, or we did that. And then you see white people in headlines, it's like, oh, they have this bright future, like blah, blah, blah. And it's like, why are those two articles different?
Right.
And different because one is about a Black person and one is about a white person. But
exactly,
the white people don't have to follow the guidelines of how to dress, how to speak, how to act. But we as Black people are always told, like, you can't act like this, or you can't act like that.
We are stigmatized.
Mm-hmm.
It's, and what's part of that is, if you're a Black person and you speak really well, you can articulate really well, you look really well, you dress really well, you are treated differently than another Black person that is just as smart as you,
mm-hmm.
Just as, accomplished as you, but they may not speak like you. They may have their own look, but they're judged differently.
Mm-hmm.
For me, who I may look good, I may dress good, I may speak well, and I can be dumber than a box of rocks.
Right. Those are all valid points. It doesn't, it's old saying, like, basically, like, don't judge a book by its cover. Like,
exactly.
Don't judge us just because we are Black. Like,
exactly.
And it doesn't matter what we wear or how we speak. None of those are, indicative to our intelligence level or whatever,
Exactly.
So yeah. Okay, so this is kind of the last question I have about the raising kids portion.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned that when you were growing up in Chicago, you grew up in Black neighborhoods, so your parents didn't have to talk to you about race because you were only surrounded by Black people. Obviously, and I wouldn't say obviously, but now in Minnesota there are more, there are still areas that are just Black or just white. There are areas that are definitely mixed, and we are living in a world today where people are becoming more aware of racism and what they can do to be anti-racist. What advice would you have for parents parents or guardians who are raising white kids to ensure that their kids are growing up to be anti-racist?
Well, what needs to happen is, okay, if you think about it, it needs to start at home. It needs to start with the families. Yeah. And I'll tell you why. These babies that are coming out of the uterus, when they come out, we're spanking their feet trying to get them to breathe, or manipulating their backs trying to get them to breathe, suctioning their mouth trying to get the gook out of their mouth so that they can breathe. They don't come out of the womb saying, I don't like white people. I mean, I don't like Black people. They don't come out of the womb that way. These people this is a learned behavior, and it's a mimicry. It's a mimicry. It's a learned behavior and a mimicry. So it needs to start at home. You can't tell me that you have a 10, 12, 13, 14-year-old kid who doesn't like a Black kid because they just looked at the kid. Kids love kids. Kids play with all kids. I mean, you look at these videos trending on YouTube and Facebook, and these kids are hugging each other and running to each other. Kids love kids. This stuff is being taught at home. So my advice is it starts within the family. Start teaching your kids at a young age what unification is. And I'm talking racial unification. Teach them at a young age. Take them to a Black museum. Teach them about Black culture, because a lot of this stuff isn't being taught in school, believe it or not. And the stuff that is being taught in school, some of it isn't even true about our culture.
The stuff that's being taught in school is presented in a way to make the white people or the white person comfortable.
It's a lesson plan.
Like
that's exactly what it is. It's a lesson plan.
It's not a lesson plan for us. It's a lesson plan that ignores, very important details for white comfortability, for lack of a better term.
Exactly. So my advice, that's my biggest advice. Start your kids at a young age, teaching them about different cultures. And it doesn't have to be just Black culture. There's more cultures in the world than just Black culture. Just teach them about culture, period. Period, across the line. There's so many million cultures. There's the Asian culture. There's the Black culture. There's just culture, period.
I definitely think it, like you said, it starts at home. It is a learned behavior. It's not something that, you don't just wake up one day and decide, oh, I'm going to be racist. Or
like I said, you don't come out of the womb like that.
Right. And
how many 1-year-olds you seen running around the house saying KKK?
Yeah, none, unless that's what their parents are running.
Exactly.
But yeah, even if you think of, so many people when they're raising young children, they try not to swear, right? Because they know their kids are going to repeat everything they say. It's the same thing.
Right. So. Right. Exactly. And I agree with that point. And that was actually a good point. If you can teach your kids not to swear, you can teach your kids about just being safe in all areas. Then teach your kids about culture. And how it affects other people.
I think, I think unfortunately, I don't even want to have to use the word unfortunately, but I think unfortunately it's definitely easier said than done. I think for some families that will work really well. I think other families need to work on their own internal struggles with white supremacy and
and I think for some people it's just it because things have gotten so bad now. It's never come up in their household, just like you said, like with me. We never had to have the conversation in my household about white people because I was around all Black people. I think it goes both ways. They never had to have that conversation because they were all around all white people. But now that most things are becoming integrated, and with everything that's happening with the Black people, with the way the world has changed, it's a conversation that needs to take place in every household now. This is not like 20 years ago where the whites were here and the Blacks were there. It's not like that anymore.
I agree. So you mentioned current day. Let's talk about current day for a little bit here. In previous conversations, you have talked about our judicial system and how it continues to fail Black people. Definitely want to talk about that a little bit, and I want to hear from you, what do you think needs to change, and if you think that change is even feasible?
Okay, well, that's a two-part question. So before I talk about change, may I speak about how it failed us? Absolutely. Or how I think it's failed us?
That's the first part of the question, so yeah.
Yes. So I think there's a inequality and, inability for Black people to get a fair trial. That's how I think the system has failed us. Black people are paying for the color of their skin, not their crime. That's exactly what's going on. They're getting, it's the color of their skin, not the crime that they commit.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you look at the justice system, it's dominated by white jurors, okay, white prosecutors, and white judges. Is that perception valid? I don't know. That's up to most people to decide. To me, yes, it is. It's called the color of justice.
Mm-hmm.
Look at the color of justice.
Mm-hmm.
Now, are there minorities in the justice system? Yes. But who is dominating the justice system?
The same people.
So that's why I say, the justice system has failed us. You put a Black person on trial, they put 2 Black jurors on there.
Mm-hmm.
Why is that? So, yes, there's a few things we could do as Black people. Maybe, we should start seeking, careers as judges. Maybe we need to get on the bench. Maybe we need to become prosecutors. Maybe we need to become, try to get more into the jury deal, so that we can incorporate ourselves into the judicial system to make it a little bit more fair and put that equality there for the Black person that's on trial.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the first answer to your question. The second part of your question is what I think needs to happen.
And if it's even feasible.
I think it's feasible. I think the abatement needs to stop.
Mm-hmm.
And we need accountability, prosecution, and more importantly, convictions.
Mm-hmm.
We get prosecutions,
Yeah.
but how many get convicted? We need to start getting some convictions.
Mm-hmm.
We need to start getting people to fight for us.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I think needs to happen. Do I think it's feasible? Yes, it is.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, like I said in the first part of your question, and my answer, we need to get more people from our communities involved in the judicial system, so that we can get convictions. And that's my answer to that.
I would agree. I think, I think you brought up a really good point. When we're looking at the judicial system, we're seeing that it's largely represented by white people. And you made a very good point. And, more Black people need to kind
they need to intercept.
Right. Tap into that career. I think when I think of it as like, you almost have to go one step before that. And it's kind of, I guess we'll call it, just like awareness. We Black people need to be made aware that they can do whatever they want to do. Right.
And educated. Let's put our Black kids, let's send them to law school. They can do anything they want. Let's get them some mentors. Start them out at an early age. Let them go follow some, Black lawyer. Let them go mentor that person. Let them go to the law firm and hang out with them after school like you do at the Girls and Boys Club. Let them see, this is what I can do.
Yeah. I think, I also think that, that becomes a resource issue as well, even though it's not an issue, because you can look at predominantly, white neighborhoods that have all the resources underneath the sun and the moon in their school systems, in their sports system, the arts, all of that. And then you can go to, neighborhoods where it's predominantly Black and they don't have the same resources. So I definitely think it starts there.
They don't even have the money to keep our schools open. They're closing 3 and 4 elementary schools in the Black neighborhood all the time.
Yep.
We don't have money for books. We don't have money for computers, that kind of stuff. I think it was Jennifer Hudson. She surprised a whole school with brand new computers.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think, I think more of that needs to happen in Black neighborhoods. We need to start putting resources where they need to be. Some of these fancy schools that have all the latest tech and all the mentors and all that, and we're continuing to give them money to fuel that programs. But on the other hand, you have these programs that are way down here because they don't have all the resources. So it's like, why are we keep funding over here when funding needs to be over here? These kids are equally as important.
Or why can't we share some of the funding? Even that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, let's just share some of the funding.
Yeah, not a whole lot of people want to help out the Black neighborhoods, unfortunately. But yeah. I definitely hope we can move to a world where we don't have to have this conversation. We have equal access to everything that our white counterparts do.
That's right. I agree.
So you grew up in like the 70s, 80s era, obviously. Do you think that racism has gotten better since like when you were growing up, or do you think it's gotten worse?
That's a good question. I'm not really sure about that. And the reason why I say I'm not sure about that, because I think some things have gotten better. Mm-hmm. I think that what's gotten better is I think that the system, the government, whoever you want to call them, they're trying to do a better job of educating about the inequality that's happening. Mm-hmm. But are they doing enough to stop it?
Right.
Like, I think they are trying. I mean, they're talking about it, which is good, because like I said, I didn't hear these conversations growing up. Mm-hmm. So at least now we're hearing about it. Yep. So in that sense, it's a good thing. Mm-hmm. We still have a long way to go. Mm-hmm. Long way to go. We definitely not there. I mean, are we a post-racism system? Not at all. Not at all.
Yeah, I kind of think about that a lot. Definitely some things have gotten better, but like you said, mm-hmm. we are educating, but we need to be doing more to fix these things. So we
need more than just educating. We need to fix these things.
Right. And obviously I would assume just like anybody else, I'm trying to have hope for it. I hope that I can see it in my lifetime. There are definitely days that I don't think that I will be able to see it, which, to be honest, really sucks.
Yeah. Well, I'm hoping you will be able to see it.
Yeah, I'm hoping I'll be.
I've seen the difference. I mean, we started this conversation out with, I didn't even know what racism was, and now I know about it, and mm-hmm. I see that it has changed, mm-hmm. but we're still here.
Yeah.
Compare. I mean,
mm-hmm.
we're nowhere on the map.
Yeah. And I think it's such a wild concept to think about, because
it's a sad concept to think about.
Yeah, definitely a sad concept. I can't even, most of the times I can't even conceptualize it, because it's like, why do we have to fight to be treated as equals? Because our skin is a little bit darker. Mm-hmm. It's just mind-boggling, to be honest, and it's not fair. And people can turn around and say the world's not fair. Well,
I don't think we will ever live in a post-racial society. I'm just saying, that's my take on it. And like you said, if we do, probably not, I don't think I will be around for it, for sure. I mean, I hope that my kids will, mm-hmm. but I mean, at my age, I probably won't. But I mean, we're making progress. I mean, baby steps. But we need to move a little bit quicker than baby steps, because what's happening is, society is taking its time, and our people are dying. Mm-hmm. It's not okay.
Yeah, it's definitely not. Okay, so that's a perfect segue into my next question for you, which we kind of touched on it a little bit earlier when we were talking about the media. So my question for you is, how do you feel that Black people are portrayed in the media, and in film and TV? And I know times where, different for you when you were growing up. But when you were growing up, did you feel like when you saw Black people in the media, in film and TV, do you think that they were accurately portrayed?
No.
And
No.
I would assume for now you would still have the same answer.
Let me tell you about that. Media representation, okay, it's not always been in a positive light, and it propagates controversial and misconstrued images of Black people. Do you know from 1955 to 1986, only 6%, just let that marinate, of the characters on primetime TV were Black people.
From what years again?
1955 to 1986.
Only 6%.
6% of the characters on primetime TV. Primetime is your 2579 channels.
Yeah.
Were Black people. Okay, to add on to that, there's that debate about ownership and diversity affecting content diversity, which also contributes to the idea that, for Blacks to be represented in the media, there needs to be Black ownership in the media. So like more Tyler Perry's.
Yep.
So that's what I feel about Blacks being portrayed in the media and what needs to happen. There needs to be more Black owned ownership in the media.
When you think of so if you think of any like movies and TV shows today that have Black people, Black characters, do you feel like those Black characters are accurately portrayed, or do you think that
No, because you think about Good Times. How were they portrayed? As this poor Black family in the projects.
Yeah, eating oatmeal every day.
Exactly. And that's not true. I mean, that's not true.
Yeah.
My best friend here in Minnesota, born and raised in Minnesota. Her with two parents, they grew up in a house in Apple Valley, and both parents worked 2 full-time jobs, and they weren't in the projects, and they were back in that era, and they raised their kids with the money they had, and they all did well. So it's not, not all Black people were living like that. So, I mean, how many Black people did you see living in a home with a family, and both parents worked, and the kids went to nice schools and dressed nice? I don't recall any shows like that.
Yeah.
I watched the Jeffersons, but where were the kids? So, yeah, the media has misportrayed us forever.
Yeah, I think, off the top of my head, I think of a few shows where, they haven't portrayed us as, all the stereotypes and whatnot, but even then it's still only, a handful, maybe less than a handful. Whereas you think of all the white shows and videos, if you think of all the white shows and movies, it's...
Well, like I said, from 1955 to 1986, there was only 6% of us that even made the screen.
I feel like, and I obviously try. It's like I said, those few shows that we do have. I'm trying to think of. There's a show called Grownish. I think it's called. It is a spin-off of, I can't remember the show that they had before that. But as a Black family, they all live in the same house, like successful, and when I was watching that show, and they had kids, the kids went off to college, and I think the Grownish, that was like the spin-off that followed one of the daughters off to college. And even me just watching that, I thought that it was very heartwarming to see a Black family portrayed like that, because that is not something that's made up. Like that's very real, and
Mm-hmm.
it's not very often that you get to see that in film and in TV. A lot of times when I see even Black characters, I notice like what roles they're playing in movies and TV shows, and there are so many Black people that are, and it's no fault to them, or might be a conversation with their agent, but when you see like maids in TV shows, it's always a Black person, and they always they honestly they have them dressed like they're a slave, like nobody
Well,
wears.
you know what? And it's not just those shows either, honey. I mean, this is 2020. Look what just happened to Gabrielle Union.
Mhm.
She was told by a major network that I won't mention
Mhm.
that her hair is too black.
Yeah, and what does that even mean? It's
Are
too.
you kidding me?
What does that mean though? Like,
Are you kidding me? 2020. Your hair is too black
yeah,
for prime time.
yeah,
This is stuff people don't understand that we go through.
yeah. And I also think one thing that people may not realize is, again, going back to having accurate Black representation in film and TV, is I could put on Netflix right now and go to, they always have like trending now in the US, or Netflix favorites or whatever it may be. I guarantee
Mm-hmm.
you I could pick out 10 movies, and the majority of them will all be white. They won't,
Yeah.
there isn't any movies or TV shows that are based around Black families, or even just Black movies
Right.
that are doing successful. And it's like a lot. We obviously, we're Black, so we know what movies and stuff like we can watch.
Mm-hmm.
And when we're talking to our white friends and associates, they probably, some of them probably have no idea that said movies or TV shows even exist.
Yeah.
And wouldn't even think to incorporate that into their daily routine of, these are the shows that I watch. Like, instead of
Yes.
watching all of the white shows, like, diversify everything in your life, whether that's film, TV, your music, what you read, even foods that you eat. It doesn't all have to be one thing. Like,
Yeah.
we have the ability to tap into lots of different cultures, and
Mm-hmm.
I think people need to do a better job of doing that, because no white person ever has to worry about not seeing themselves on TV, or seeing a character of themselves on TV. It wasn't
Right.
it wasn't until recently where you were seeing more Black characters, becoming superheroes or doctors, on film and TV.
Mm-hmm.
We're not just maids, we're not just athletes. We can do all of these other things, and
Mm-hmm.
people
Right.
people don't realize the impact of that. Like, do you really understand what it's like to turn on film and TV and not see somebody that looks like you? Especially for these young kids growing up, they need to see that people like them can do all the things.
I remember when you were younger and you were you remember you were really into Grey's Anatomy. That was your stuff. And
Oh, yeah.
but you know what? You can relate. There was that Black doctor on there. You really liked her, and I mean that was your show.
Yeah.
What happened to that?
What happened in Grey's Anatomy?
Well, I'm just saying shows like that.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I mean, they're like, if you think of a Scandal,
Yeah.
the Shonda Rhimes show, they did a great job with that. Obviously, How to Get Away with Murder, Viola Davis is killing it in the market right now. But
Yes.
if you look at, she takes home all these awards, and you look at her pay compared to her white counterparts, and she has been very vocal about, you are going to pay me what I deserve,
Mhm.
because I got the receipts right here to show you all my awards, but you're still paying me significantly less than my white counterparts. And for what? Why?
Well, I know we have to wrap this up soon, but I do want to make a couple of comments. I have some white people in my life to this day that's been in my life that has been amazing to me, and have tried everything to understand my culture and get to know me, have taken me into their homes and treated me like family. So I just want to put that out there because I don't want this video to come across as a bashing thing, because it's not. It's to educate, but I do want to also send, props to my white friends who have taken me in, have accepted me as me, who have said, Dawn, I'm so sorry. I never understood what you guys were going through. I appreciate that, and have tried, they're trying to understand what we're going through, because that's what's going to help with the change. It's the people that want to make a change. Now you got those who don't care what we're going through, but then you have those that they do care. They're trying to figure out, they're buying books, they're reading books, they're trying to understand, what are you guys going through? What did you guys experience? What did I miss growing up as a white person? And so I just wanted to put that out there because, I probably wouldn't be where I am today had it not been for, a white friend that I had up here who took me into her home, when I got sick.
Right.
So I just wanted to put that out there.
Yeah, I think I definitely echo all those comments. Shout out to you, all my white people out there. We love you.
Yes, love you guys.
That are out here educating yourselves, you're reading books, and like my mom just said, you guys didn't realize what we were going through, and through this self-education you're realizing that, and you're telling, like, I'm sorry, like, I'm doing, like, let's change this. I think I can speak for you, and I say this, we really appreciate that.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
So I think that's definitely a good point to add.
Yes.
So my last question for you, and obviously you can add any other points too if we miss anything, but I try to ask all the Black people this same question because it's interesting to see everyone's response. So for you, what does being Black in America mean?
For me?
Yeah, for you. What do you think it means to be Black in America?
Well, I'm only going to speak for myself.
Yeah.
And I have a one-word answer for that. I'm sorry. Proud. I am proud to be Black.
I like it. And you should be.
Yes.
I'm very proud to be Black, and anybody's,
yes,
watching this, if you are Black.
I am proud, and I wouldn't change it.
Yeah, I never, ever.
Of course, we can elaborate on that, but we all know it goes back to the same thing. So the biggest thing for me is I am proud to be Black.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Yeah, even all the things that we go through, and even future things to come. If someone said, hey, you can take this magic pill and you can be white, you don't have to worry about it, like, absolutely not. I love who I am.
That's right. And if we didn't go through a struggle, how are you going to be strong?
Right.
That's what's made, most Black women are very strong women.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we can carry 5 babies on our hip and stand on the bus stop and drop them off at daycare and go to work and come home and cook dinner and do laundry and do it all over again in the morning and not even complain about it.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I have one last thing I want to say to you.
Yeah, what is it?
And I just want to tell you that I'm glad that you're using this platform not only to expose racism that people of color has experienced, mm-hmm. but also to educate people and communities. Yeah. That's what I want to say. And I really appreciate you doing that because it's reaching people. It's reaching people.
So that's, that was really the whole, I'd probably say this in every episode, and I'm going to say it again because it's really important. That is the whole purpose of this platform. It's not on here to bash a bunch of white people and all that. It's really just to share our experiences, talk about.
Exactly. No, because at the end of the day, we all have white people in our lives that we love dearly. Yeah. I know I do, and I know for sure you do. So yeah.
Do you have anything else to add?
No, I just want to say thank you so much for allowing me to do this, and I can't wait to see it posted. And keep doing what you're doing, And, I'm just going to say it again. This is not a basher. This is an educational moment. Yeah. We love everybody.
And obviously, thank you for coming on this platform. I know
Yes.
this is a new for us. You know, we don't really talk about these things very often, so it was definitely really.
No. And you and I have never sat down and talked about this, so this was interesting and it was very good.
Yeah, we've never almost 31 years old, and we've never
No.
talked about this. So I
You
think.
know, I'm always having this conversation with my son,
Mhm.
but you know, my daughter and I have never had this conversation, so this was good.
Yeah, it was good, and I think this will open up doors for future conversations, for us to have, and we can just go from there. So
Got
with
it.
with that said, again, thank you again.
Who loves you?
Love
Mommy loves you.
you too, Ma. I'll talk to you later.
All right. Good night.
Bye.